Yourself, you're back. Yeah.
You sure the camera committed?
Yep.
Yeah, I hear Doug. I hear your car. Good guys.
Go like this. Mute. I think I can mute people too. So welcome everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining this program here with the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. And part of what we're doing is one of my favorite docents is Dennis. And then Dennis moved and I was so sad. And then I found out I could get in touch with him over Zoom. So I thought, we got to talk to Dennis about all of his amazing programs that he does, because he has like the most amazing life and all the things that he's done. So this is the first installment because he's done quite a few cool things and we couldn't fit it all into 1 hour. So Dennis, I will have you go ahead and take it away and go ahead and introduce yourself. And then when you're ready for your slides, let me know and I will share my screen and pull the slides up for everybody to see.
Okay, yeah, this is Dennis Dowling. I've, been in the Bay Area all my life, and my parents were born there in Oakland and Berkeley, and my grandparents were born in Oakland. So we go back 3 generations. So I'm actually kind of the first generation that have kind of moved out, but I'll be back in 2 years. So I'd like to show you a bunch of slides with which I'm trying to do here is to kind of put them together in I was going to say a book, but I think more in a presentation like this with just showing slides. I've gone through 800 slides, old slides, and it's taken me weeks upon weeks. And just to kind of go over some of the interesting field trips that I've conducted over the years. Some of them may be familiar to you that know me, and some of them, because I'm a storyteller, and some of them you may never have seen, I'm sure. So go ahead. I'm ready to show do the presentation here. Okay, so 50 years of successful and not so successful nature field trips. I started counting up of all the field trips, and it definitely is over 6,000 attendees. And these are not just high school or students, but it's elementary school, or even I've done a field trip to preschool. And then I've done adult education and took adults to the Sierra Nevadas and to the Bay Area. And so even senior citizens. So I've kind of gone down to run the gamut of all sorts of people. So, the amazing thing of those 6,000, some of them have been very adventurous. I've only had 1 helicopter rescue. I got all these kids back in one piece, and that's quite amazing. Okay, next one. Let's go on to the next. Oh, the gopher. Well, I'll just mention the gopher 1 second. Is at Point Reyes, which we go for a lot of times at Wildcat Beach. The kids will have all these activities to do, but they spent their time trying to take photos of about 40 little gopher holes that they would pop up, and then the kids would scamper over there and try to take a picture, and it would bend down. So we had a contest to see who could actually get one of these gopher. They wasted, hundreds of photographs back in the old days trying to find this guy. So that's a kind of an activity. So hunt for the gopher. Okay, next one. So the first one that we did, this is 1971. I had been a backpacker, and I found out that at Wildcat Beach at Point Reyes National Seashore, they just opened up some backcountry trails to the beach. And this beach here, Wildcat Beach, is 6 miles, maybe even to the closest dirt road, and actually 7.5 miles from the center of Point Reyes, the headquarters. And so I decided to get the 2 other science teachers, Paul Pettarelli and Jerry Stufloten, amazing guys who that we would have 8th grade field trip. Because back in 1970, if you opened up a 7th and 8th grade science book, it was a killer. It was the most boring thing on this planet. And it needed to be rewritten, and I know they've rewritten it quite a lot. But at that time, it was just chapter after chapter, and that's what the old science teachers would do. So So I figured we'd do a backpacking trip, and we would take 40 eighth grade students to on a 3-day and learn really about the Bay Area biotic communities and learn and experience a natural setting. And so this is what we would do. We'd have a parents meeting, and they would research 10 animals and plants before they went, and then submit it to us, and then we would select the 40. But it was about 40 people 40 kids that actually did that effort. So let's go on to the next one. Next slide there. And we would say, let's go, we're gonna go to the backpacking and find a beach and at this, and then we'll go to a sky camp, which is the other one, which we did later. And students will share plant and animals, see what they see there. We'll have a campfire on the beach. And we'll have, we'll do music and tell stories over a campfire. So here we are. So that's what we told the students. Next one. Okay, so the next slide there. And now what I would do is with, which I didn't have at that time, but in the next years past, I got an area, a place where some of the kids were out and backpacking and enjoying it. And take a look at the smiles and the camaraderie that's happening, and with the foggy background. And a lot of people, well, there's one guy there that looks a little sad, a little tired. But this is what we would try to tell the students what they're going to experience in the backcountry. So the next one, let's go on to the next one here. Well, what happened was, this is my mistake, is Jerry and Paul were great, biology teachers and experienced, but they were not experienced in backpacking. I kind of forgot that. And so Jerry and Paul said, well, we want to bring a 9x12 cabin tent, and then we're going to feed all these 40 students. How are we going to feed them? Well, he said, well, we can bring in hot dogs and buns and some little oatmeal and stuff, and then they go, well, we want to be in a tent, and they didn't like to think about a little backpacking tent, so they said, well, bring a 9x12 tent. I says, Jerry, you can't pack all that. Says, oh, well, there's a stable right there. We'll rent a donkey and we'll pack all our stuff in. And then, all the food for the eighth graders. Okay. And so we all met, and then there was they brought out cactus juice, and the name is cactus juice, and it was going to carry the 100 wieners and buns and chips and carrot sticks for 48th graders and the 4 teachers. One teacher, Vern Gring, was really, really old, but probably was only in his 50s. And I thought, and he comes into the story later. So while they were packing this thing there, the 2 of them, the 8th graders were antsy to go. So I took nearly all of them that were ready and put them on the trail, and each had a map, and they just followed me, and they knew where to go. And we're going to Wildcat Camp, and it was pretty well straight, but it's 8 miles. They had water, they had some of their snacks, trail snacks, and some food. And as we went, and we made it all the way to Wildcat. Well, I looked around and waited hour, 2 hours, and almost 2.5 hours, no sign of cactus juice, and the teachers and the few students that stayed with them. So we'll go on to the next slide. Go to the next slide. So this is not cactus juice, but I just thought I'd tell that. So what happened, which I didn't know because there's no cell phones in those days, is cactus juice refused to begin the 7-mile journey to Wildcat Beach. And pretty much the donkey knew that these guys were rookie. These are greenhorns. They had never experienced how to take care of a donkey and how to talk to care and how to pack the proper way. So that donkey went about 10 yards, 20 yards, and 50 yards out of the stable, and then he just stopped. And no matter what they could do for a half hour, they did it. They talked, they cussed at him, they pulled the tail, they talked to him nicely, and he just was stubborn. And so Jerry says, well, let me tell him, okay, we're going to go a different route. So he started turning around that donkey. And as soon as that donkey was halfway around, it went lickety-split back to the stable. All of the wieners and the buns and the cabin tent went flying off, strewn on the side of the trail right before the stable, and ran in and he wanted to get back in that stable. There was no way in heck he was going to go on that 8-mile trek with these greenhorns. So they tried to carry all this stuff in, and they only got halfway. They got about 4.5 miles, and they collapsed. And they were just waiting for someone to come back and help them. So we'll go on to the next slide. So kind of thinking of me, I was thinking that maybe that they're having trouble and they needed help. So I got all the students together and told them, all your food is 3 miles away and it's on the side of the trail or somewhere. And we need a party of strong 8th graders to go and help them bring in the food for for tonight's meal. And so here's one of the kids that I was kind of talking about, you mean all I have to eat is this stink bug, So he was one of the first to volunteer, the food up there. So, the 8th graders like to eat. So they all went up there and we found those kids and Jerry and Paul, and they're quite hilarious teachers, and they were laughing. And they said, we cannot go any further with all this stuff. And poor Vern Green, the old guy, he was just lying there and he couldn't even smile. He was really tired. So we had about 7 or 8 kids and we took all of that stuff and carried it for them. And they come marching in trudgingly without practically all of their stuff with these 7 or 8th graders. And we saved the day and it turned out to be a great trip. Okay, let's see what the next slide shows. So here's our.
Okay, Dennis, hold on for 1 second.
Yeah.
So if for some reason you're not able, you other folks are not able to see the pictures, you can click on the box that has a picture of Dennis talking. And sometimes if you click on that, it'll go back and forth between Dennis and the slides. So give that a try and then let us know if that works for you so you can see them.
Okay.
Okay, Dennis, go ahead.
Okay, hi. Oh, Arthur Xu just said it doesn't seem to be letting people in. Arthur Xu wants to get in.
Okay, I will go in there. I had a question for you guys. Can you actually see the control panels that I'm doing? I don't want to mess up your pictures.
You're good.
Oh, there's Arthur.
Go. Okay, there you go.
Okay. Hi, Arthur.
Hello.
Hello. We're right in there. You just missed the cactus juice story, but
Okay.
I'll tell you that some other later.
Thanks.
So shall I continue on now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Do.
So this is halfway between the Bear Valley headquarters and Wildcat Beach, and it's Arch Rock, and we just kind of a little sidelight trip. And this is a group that came many years after, but I just want to show you what it really looked like. And then we have a little story about Arch Rock. The next one, please. Okay. And so this is the great picture here. This is what they came for, and it's a kick to see 8th graders, any high school kids, and I've taken adults here on a backpack trip. As you get down to this secluded beach, and it's spectacular. You're in Drake's Bay. Very few airplanes going over except for the way high, and there's a small little creek that goes through here. It's just really nice to have a little mess about and just relax. And it's not, I'm not going to teach them very much there. They're going to experience it, and I'll talk about the reason why kind of later. Okay, next one. However, back to Arch Rock. That's Arch Rock, spectacular view. And this is after you go to Arch Rock, and you can see little guys here. I don't know if you're right there, and so are my students. and then there's some students right at the edge right there. And it's really a spectacular place to just mess about. If you walk down here, and you can climb the side here, which here is a small little beach. And then there's an arch on the bottom that you can go over to a massive beach. That's the only way you can really get to, or unless you can go through shrub over on the right. It's a beautiful place. And you can see this granite that just, it's old. It's got an amazing amount of lichen on this thing here. It's just spectacular. And overlooking the entire Drake's Beach. So let's go on to the next one. So I mentioned that something here, and here's students, which if they see this, and then what I think they would be okay. I'm not sure, but about 10 years after they've been there, this is later, maybe 2008 or 9, and these two are just great kids that are adults now and contributing to I think they've really learned a lot about the natural area and become environmental stewards of the planet by coming to these backpack trips. So let's go on to the next one, and this is the scary one. Is that about probably more than 3-4 years. Remember, this is 50 years, and I have this, so it's hard to get through this. But about 3, 4, 7, 8 years ago, the arch drop here, right where those guys were sitting, amazing split. We're on the close to the Pacific, the San Andreas Fault, and this is a movement, and there's a mass wasting, and this whole thing looks like it's going to go. Well, they put up a barrier up here, and said, no other people, danger. It's ready to collapse. Don't go out here. Well, unfortunately, the left side gave away, and one person was killed because they stepped over that barrier and came out here and sat at the edge here, and it collapsed. And I make decisions all the time when I'm on backpack trips or on any field trip about, is it safe? And that is I've been really fortunate, but I kind of know, I wouldn't have gone there. If it said there, I would have told them, no way in heck you guys would go out there. But unfortunately, people don't listen. Next one. And so, just the Point Reyes is a spectacular place. If you haven't really, everybody goes to, a lot of people go Point Reyes and you drive out to the beach or the lighthouse or, no, don't do that. Backpack in for a day, get reservations at Sky Camp or Wildcat Beach or Glen Camp and experience some things there. This is, you cannot believe if you bring kids there and let them walk on their own, that it's amazing, the change in their personality and their attitudes, and they become stewards. They, even if they're exhausted and tired and, complain, they're a different person after some of these field trips. Hey, hi, Alan. Next one, please. Alan was on this back trip. And here's a place for Point Reyes that I think is a forgotten one, and it's worth going to for anyone, is you go to the Bear Valley headquarters, and you just take this Sky Camp trail to the Ridge Trail, and you walk, and we're at Sky Camp, and we walk along this trail, and it reminds me of the Ewok Forest. And actually, Star Wars, a lot was filmed not too far from here. The bay of the Ewok Forest. I think that was mostly redwoods, but there was some Doug fir forest. This is a pure strand of Doug fir. And every time I go on a field trip, I really want to think in terms of it as a science field trip. And so, I never know what's going to happen and what is going to spark interest and inquiries and questions regarding a natural habitat. Well, the one here is this Doug fir forest is a pure Doug fir forest. It's a virgin Doug-fir forest, and there's no redwood trees. There's those coast redwoods, and you go 8 to 10 miles south. You're in the Muir Woods, and you're in the close to the ocean, and you have redwoods galore. And then even north, you get even more. Mendocino up there, there's redwoods galore. How come not here? Well, I came up with a hypothesis on this that's kind of unique, and it's about soil conditions and the substrate. This air side here is part of the Pacific plate. And the coast redwoods, all of them are on the North American plate. And so the rock substrate is totally different. I took a geology course from UC Berkeley where we went out and at a road cut very close to here, we stopped, and on the Pacific plate side, they said, "Hey, hammer away at that rock." We did, and it was a rock, a light colored, and some black in it, and little shreds black, and it just fell apart. It was like sand. It could just grind it up into a sand. And he said, he says, "This is granite." I said, "Well, wait a minute, granite's a solid rock." He says, "Well, this is what happens when granite moves and grinded against the plate for 300 miles. So the granite, the basic of Point Reyes that juts out, which is the Pacific plate, is really the composition is a lot of major granite from pretty much the southern end of the Sierra Nevadas, and it's there were dips around to almost Mexico, or it's LA, and has gone up for the 20 million years, 100 million years, and has moved up to Point Reyes. It's still moving northwest. So quite an interesting concept there. And I'm still looking for someone to do a master's thesis on that. That's just my hypothesis. Okay, next one. So, and here's these, it's a great trail to take. I suggest strongly if you haven't done that. Joyce, hello. Okay, next one. Let's go on to the next. So, reason for field trips, and a couple of things that you need to know. I kind of wrote down a few things here. It's total immersion into content, what you want to teach. You should have major passion, and you should be enthusiastic. And it's okay to have a little bit of a theatrics, on yours, which you just got a boisterous person that will connect and allow your people on your field trip to remember things, what you really want to do, and then have achievable goals. What do you really want to do? What do you want them to learn? And then after that, so that you kind of want to do the content, teach some actual content, like maybe we're going to the next one's going to be a marine biology, and so you have a focus. Or different habitats of the Bay Area and the names of trees and vegetations and the biotic communities. But in order to do that properly, you have to teach through all the modalities of learning, and that's like visual, auditory, tactile, gustatory, spatial, and olfactory. Have them smell a pine tree and smell a sage. And as opposed to just say, this is a sage. So you use as many of what is called the different modalities of taking in information. And then the next one would be higher levels of learning. And I learned this, and I didn't have a clue what this meant when I was 25. It was taking me 50 years to actually figure this out. So let's go on, and let's go on to the next one. And this is Bloom's taxonomy. And every teacher from kindergarten to that learns this in their 1 year of how to teach. And the 1957, which I was taught this in 1965. Okay, and knowledge is at the base. You have knowledge, and that's important, but that's just information. So really, you want to get a comprehension. Do they understand it? And then application. Do they really, can they apply it? And then analyze, and then synthesize, and then evaluate. And so those are kind of nouns, and so in 2001, they came up with adjectives, verbs, verbs. And you're going to have them remembering and understanding and applying. And you're experiencing it all through those and analyzing, evaluating. And then maybe they'll create something themselves that will allow them to better really the basic understanding of that they really understand what you're trying to get across. And that's becoming an environmental steward of this planet. Okay, next one. Now let's get back to the next one. I'll practice that on this field trip. I know I'm talking fast because we got a lot of slides. So, but you can put questions in later, okay? Or I think now they could if they want, and we'll answer them as they come in. We'll stop and answer a few. So, Marine Science Institute, Marine Ecological Institute, Redwood City, the inland seas. This was a education group started by a gentleman, a nonprofit, and his name, which I did have down, and then I just forgot, but it'll come to me tomorrow. But Bob Rutherford, Bob Rutherford, and he on a shoestring, he got Chevron and a couple of things to buy him this boat and set him up to provide educational trips for 6th through 12th graders or 5th through 12th graders on a 4-hour discovery voyage into San Francisco Bay. Now you got to remember, in the 1960s, it was an intense time to save the bay. They were filling it in unbelievably rapidly, and you think it smelled now, and you should have smelled it in 1955. Emeryville and Berkeley, the mud flats, raw sewage was going through all throughout there. And then they took the garbage that they collected from everybody's house, and they dumped it right at the edge of the bay. And it turned out that every single city around the bay in the 1960s had their own garbage company, and they would pile it up, in a big pile and set fire to it every night. And if you took a plane ride, a small plane ride around the bay, you would see these 30 little of those fires running all the way around the bay. And then they would just bulldoze it and fill in the bay. And that's tragic. And then really, 2 little old ladies started to come through and file some lawsuits against them, and because they were polluting the air resource board started that. So it's important that we do something about the bay, because that in the Bay Area, most people never get out on the bay. It's right there. So this discovery voyage, they do an otter trawl net and plankton, and they do dissolved oxygen, and they looked at they do a core sample of the bay. Quite fascinating. So we had done this many times for the kids, and then when I started teaching high schools, the kids says, "Hey, let's go and do something more on the inland seas, but let's not go to the old boring, discovery voyage. Let's take it out to somewhere really exciting." So let's go on to the next slide. Next slide here. So at the same time, my old dad tells stories just like I do, but he would come and he worked at the Berkeley Radiation Lab, now called Berkeley Lawrence Lab, but it was a radiation lab. And they did a lot of trying to find and cure cancer through using radioactive isotopes. So they're making radioisotopes right and left. And the clothing and the tools and materials would become radioactive. And so they actually ended up, would just pile these in 50-gallon drums and store them. They're low-grade radioactive. They weren't really super hot, but they did give off radiation. And then unbeknownst to anybody, they would pile them on a barge and then scoot that barge all the way out to the Pacific Ocean by the Farallon Islands and the deepest area there, and dump, these 50-gallon drums. So I always wondered, well, this is, 30 years later, or 20 years later, is there, cancer on these fish now? Is it increased there? Could we see if they're still radioactive? I know by eating part of the food chain. So we did 40 kids, going to take a 20-hour trip from Redwood City out to the Farallon Islands. We had 2 captains on board, and one of them was named Captain Groovy. And this is in the 70s, and he was, he fit the description of someone that has a name of Captain Groovy. Anyway, this is one of, so we started out taking samples of dissolved oxygen right here and salinity with the hydrometer there. So we're going to test the land and then compare it out to the Farallon Islands. And so you notice there was a focus on this field trip. It wasn't, hey, let's go see what's there, and so they were going to participate. So that's a little bit more higher level on Bloom's taxonomy. Well, he hit the potato patch. Now we left at 12 o'clock. We left. We probably left about 1:30, and it took us like 4 hours just to get from Redwood City to San Francisco Bay Bridge, and then by Alcatraz and heading out to the Pacific Ocean. So it was just by daylight, and lo and behold, the swells got huge right after the Golden Gate Bridge. And well-known people know that's called the potato patch. And it's known for being very high swells, but today was extra special. There were some 9-foot swells, and I'm not joking there. And as we started going out, I kind of noticed there wasn't any other boats, no other fishing boats around. And usually you'd see a few maybe. And so no other boats outside. So these waves, probably, from the estuary, Sacramento, and the San Joaquin River coming in. This is in the springtime, water mixed, even it makes those waves even larger. So it's the springtime is even the worst time to go out. Extremely high waves and bumpy. Well, I got kind of scared and asked Captain Groovy, should we turn around? And he says, well, we're too far out now. If I tried to turn around now, I'd be broadside to those 9-foot swells. And frankly, I wouldn't want to really do that right now. I was scared to death. And I looked around at, how other students were doing, and we had them in the main cabin now, at a main cabin, so you couldn't be out on deck because of the swells. So I went there, and let's look at the cabin site here. Well, here's one guy, and we're just closing in on the Farallon Islands, and it got a little bit calm in one section. And here's one of our students enjoying the view. And he's one of the few that was able to walk out and actually, experience being at the Farallon Islands. And here's a photo of the Farallon Islands, rock, and one of the other students who I'm still buddies with, she was only one of the few that didn't get seasick. So all of the other, there was 37, 38 students that were unbelievably seasick. They were so seasick, they didn't care whether or not they lived or died, if you ever been in that feeling. I was still, I didn't feel good, but I was scared to death. That was death. And this is why. Here we are. This right here is a jerbuck. And if you take a closer look, he looked kind of green. And son of a gun, there he is there. And here's me, and here's John Trapani, great guy. And he's a teacher at Salinas and got his own natural area.
Is that you over there?
What?
Is that you right there? Are you in the
That's me right there, yeah.
Hey,
My
right
skinny guy,
on.
the little brown beard, yeah. And so, I'm skinny now again, But anyway, and there's Annie Holt, she was a teacher. And all these people were unbelievably, Jerry Stuflo, he has turned green. and he was in the Coast Guard. So we did make it back. So we'll go back to the next one. We'll come back now. I think is that, yeah. Yeah, well, anyway, we did make it back. We recycled the inland seas, and as we came back, we became a little bit nicer because we're with the waves. And I look off to the right, and there was one other boat come out there, and it was a huge boat. It was, and this is the truth, it was the Coral Sea. So I went, oh my gosh, thank God. If we go down, they've got helicopters, they can rescue at least some of us, but we didn't have to. We get in the bay, the kids were fine. We had lunch and we went over to the estuary in Alameda, but we didn't do much testing though. So that is kind of a crazy one. And the kids that experience that, they look back on that fondly. You can just see the smile. Oh, that was the worst I've ever spent in my entire life. Probably there was some decision making for some of the people, especially the young girls that wanted to be marine biologists. I think they decided to go into biotechnology or something a little safer. There wasn't too many marine biologists out of that group. So anyway, here's Ulistac, and then this is when I've been my passion, for 20 years, and this is it. This is the butterfly garden in about 2001 or 2002, and Chris and Jeanne's Salander's vision is to restore native habitats for butterflies, pollinators. So one of the problems that sometimes I get is I've planted some different plants there, not direct, they're native Californian, but they weren't Santa Clara Valley. But we were really focused on pollinators. And so some of those pollinators are, maybe from the south or, from San Luis Obispo even. And there's a couple from the Channel Islands that, long story, I still think that, at one time they were here, maybe not 100 years ago, but maybe 500 years ago. So we're going to restore native habitats. And there's one plant there in the corner here. In fact, I think that might be, this is the one here. This is it here. It's alpine saltbush. And the reason why we planted alpine saltbush, and we'll go to the next slide, is, there it is now, is because Jeff Caldwell, an expert on pollinators and native Bay Area plants and what each butterfly needs in order to survive. And he told me one day early on, said, Dennis, doing a great job here, but you need alpine saltbush. And I go, why? So we'll go on to the next slide. And so he says, well, it's the home of the pygmy blue butterfly, Atriplex lentiformis quail. And it turned out that I had a hard time finding that because it's kind of an ugly bush. It doesn't have a big super flower, but he said it needs to be there. And so I agreed with him. He's an expert. And lo and behold, within a year, 2 years, pygmy blue butterfly showed up. Now, and that is, really made us feel good. But after about a year, 2 years, just before that, a Bridget Nielsen of Discovery Museum came by. I think it's a Bridget, and she said, "Oh, you planted quail bush." I go, "No, that's alpine saltbush or from pygmy blue butterfly." She says, "No, we call it quail bush because quail can nest underneath there, and it grows so big and so fast and so gnarly on the wood that even a little fox or could get in there, or birds or hawks to feast on the eggs." So that they choose Atriplex lentiformis, quail bush, to nest. And so a male came, and and this is joking, there for 3 years, that male called out for a female. And it brought a tear to our eye. I almost went on Craigslist to see if I could find a female for him, but that was, couldn't, there was no luck. So I tried to match him, and I just kept hoping. And this is a picture of the female that came, and they had 7 young, baby quail in that exact place, under the quail bush, the first quail bush that we planted. Tear in my eye. Wow. Okay, if you plant it, they will come. A spectacular, story. But that's not all. Okay. So Birgit mentioned that that they, after the discovery of the Columbian mammoth that was found only a quarter-mile away on the Guadalupe River after a rainstorm, and none other than Mr. Castro walking his dog, who is the caretaker of the Guadalupe River. Hi, Castro. I haven't heard from you for very long, but I always want to give you a shout out. And his dog, after a big rainstorm, started digging in the dirt and rubble on the side of the Guadalupe River and came across a huge bone. And it was a bone of a Columbian mammoth. Paleontology department, Berkeley, came down with their class and excavated it. And it took them about 6 months to get that. And then right now, you can see that Columbian mammoth at the Children's Discovery Museum. That's Lupe, that comes right near the Ulistac Natural Area. Well, what happened was Virgin also mentioned that in the poop, and technically it wasn't the poop in this one, but in the poop in Columbian mammoths, quite frequently they find the seeds of alkaline saltbush. So alkaline saltbush was one of the primary food sources of the Columbian mammoth. And I just went, holy Toledo, no wonder. We can go back on that slide. Can we go back once? Can you slip it back one? Okay, just for once. Oh no, guess not that one. That one there. And this alkaline saltbush, for ever since we got it, it grows so fast that within every 2 or 3 weeks we have to prune it away from that walkway. It's huge, and it just grows unbelievably fast, all gnarly and scrapely. So we have to prune it back. And then it realized to me that not only was this was the food source for Columbian mammoths, and that it grew so fast, I can imagine that the Ice Age, and that there was a huge herd that roamed Santa Clara Valley, and it would come over to Ulistac for a week or two and just devour all of the gnarly alkaline saltbush and the other shrubs. And then that would take care of that, and they would move downtown to downtown San Jose. Okay, now we can go back to that one there. Yeah. And so you go back down to San Jose. And so if you go to Children's Discovery Museum, they have a hologram where you can look at this. It's just kind of like you think it's just a photograph, but if you walk, it changes into looking like this. And I stopped for a minute, and I went back, and it'd look like this, and like this. And you can kind of see, so I just took a picture of it here and took a picture of it there. So that's why it's kind of shabby. And this is an artist rendition, the photograph of what, this is probably was a photograph of what San Jose looked in 2008, okay, 9, when they did this, so 7, 8, 9. And then a anthropologist and a paleontologist drew a photo of that's pretty much that same area. Here's the Guadalupe River somewhere, I think right there. It comes around here. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so there it is. There's one there, and there's another one, Los Gatos Creek downtown, right on Santa Clara Street. They come together. And then there's the, right by the SAP Center would be over here now, somewhere. And here is 10,000 years ago, there would be herds of Columbian mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, giant ground sloths, okay, giant cats, giant lions, dire wolves, and just a myriad, and raccoons, by the way. Great story about the Ricky and Racky raccoon, which I read to it was my first book I ever read, which is kind of neat, when I was in the 11th or 11th grade. And it's a love story between two raccoons that lived right next to the La Brea tar pits. And it's great. And they come out and they wash their food, in the La Brea tar pit pool, but they go smell, oh, this is bad. So we don't go in there. We don't take our drinks there. But then the dire wolves and the Columbian mammoths would just lop into it and get stuck. And then the dire wolves and the saber-toothed cats would hop on top of them and you devour them, flesh eating. And then the big condors would come and start eating the rotten flesh, and they would all sink into it. Is that a cool picture for a kid, for 11th grader, or 11-year-old? It's a great book. It's called Monsters of Old Los Angeles, and you can buy it, online. There's a few old copies from libraries. So Monsters of Old, I didn't tell you that one. That's a new one there. Okay, but so from that, this is pretty, could have been actual what happened in old San Jose. So now I give field trips to third graders. Let's go on the next one now. And so I take a field trip, and then I have to do a little motion. So can they see me? I'll have to do my little. Can they see me right now?
Click on the little box, it'll show you can see Dennis as opposed to the slide.
Okay. Let's see.
Well, you're okay. You're okay, Dennis. They should be able to click on it and then be able to see you. And
they should. Oh, okay. Okay. So I do a field trip, and I started as for third graders, for nature, for California environment, and science. So I go to their classroom, and I instill in them an environmental ethic right away by reading the Lorax. Most of you have kids or know about the Lorax, and where it's he has these special place that he makes, and there's trees all over, but in order to pick this special snuffle, he has to cut down the trees, and he ends up cutting down practically all the trees. Ah, sad. But there's one left, and the Lorax finds that there's one seed left. And I read this sad story to the third graders, and they're all coming around me. And then what I do is I come up with a seed out of my backpack bit, and I says, okay, I have the last seed right here. Would you like to come to Ulistac and plant that seed? So what you want to do, so that is what we try to instill in them, is to plant that one seed. So we go there, and one of the problems about today is that kids are hearing everything, and adults are hearing all these facts and information from all over different people. And some of it is just real baloney. And how could a third grader, and actually now I know many adults, believe these things that they hear on the web. So I tell the students that we're going to have to develop critical thinking at your age. And there's going to be something that I'm going to say today, maybe a couple of things that are not really true. They don't make sense. You look at it, and you go, nah, that can't be true. There's something wrong with that. So if I say something that you don't think can be believable, and there's something wrong with it, I want you to just put your hands up and just go da, 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 like that. And don't say anything, just do that. So then I go back to this picture of Columbian mammoth. So I don't see the Columbian mammoth. Do I have to? Oh yeah, there we go. And I say, And here, I tell them that whole story about Columbian mammoths were here 10,000 years ago. And I tell them that here is a Columbian mammoth that I took a picture of, okay? And here's me and that 10,000-year-old Columbian mammoth, okay? And I kind of wait a little bit, and those third graders, they're smart. They know that. Wait a minute, that Ice Age. They've seen Ice Age. There's no humans there. That was before humans, and I'm not 10,000 years old. Okay, I may be old, but I ain't 10,000. So those little kids kind of go back and forth and say, hey, that's not right. I try it on some high school kids, and sometimes they don't have a clue. They just go, wow, okay, that's another. But that's kind of important, I think. So I'm now teaching a little bit more critical thinking is really important for them to do. Okay, let's go on next. So I think I just have a couple of pictures. This is the island, Mallow, and it's spectacular. And a little old lady in the 1930s found this on the Catalina Islands. Well, unbelievable. If I'm thinking 10,000 years, that a very close relationship to the Catalina Mallow. It probably existed up in the Bay Area, and we find out that this island Mallow does unbelievably great. So I think I've kind of reintroduced a species that possibly at one time was here, and maybe it only came up maybe south of here, but because of climate change, and in the 1800s we were just coming out of a ice age, and you look at pictures there, they're all wearing tweed coats and tweed things, and women were dressed in unbelievable bulky clothes. Well, part of it because it didn't reach 100 degrees for 20 days of those days. Okay, so anyway, so let's go on to the next one. And John Kehoe now is our specialist on bees, and he's teaching us more about the bumblebee and talking about the population of native bees. And the native bees, because even the honeybee is really truly not a native. But the honeybee, we haven't introduced, but the honeybee, there's been a half a dozen beautiful hives in Ulistac. And they have found some unique man-made areas to put their hives, which made them actually extremely safe and safe from all the other predators that might want to eat their ones. It's kind of interesting that these do that, but wasp and the various bees. Okay, next one. All right, I just got to give a shout out to this is Craig Breon, and Coyote Valley. I think goes to get a credit to him. He was the executive director of the Audubon Society of Santa Clara Valley in the 1990s, somewhere around that, and he's an environmental attorney, and probably in the 80s and 90s, and he's also a naturalist, and he knows about the checker spot butterfly, and people came to him and said, we need to do something before the industry takes over all of San Jose to Morgan Hill with trolleys and big businesses. I won't say who, but they had bought up a huge amount of that, and we need to save that for the checker spot butterfly. It is on becoming an endangered species already, and so he fought the good fight, and along with I'm sure a dozen other people that fight, but this is the one that was connected to also Ulistac. He was an important person, and so that on that, and here he is. He just came on one of my field trips to Ulistac on one of our open house or wildflower days, and he kind of moved away and went up to the Sierras for a while, and kind of got out of it. I think it's a tough emotional strain when you put up a fight against the odds that you don't think that you're going to make. Okay, so Hey, he's back. Just want to let him know on that.
Hey,
Okay.
Dennis, we do have somebody with their hand raised. So Eric has a question for you. Eric, if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask him.
Okay, am I coming in?
Yeah.
There you are.
Mr. Dowling, Dennis, it's good to see you as always.
Oh, yeah, Eric.
All right,
Good to see
and I
you.
always love your story, but I would like to remind you, you have a gathering of your peers here to determine whether or not you are grossly negligent of almost killing all those people. And all's we've gotten so far is a green Jerry stove floating, and you try to murder a boatload of people. Now, I'm interested in the mammoths, and I love the Mammoth Museum you brought me to. I'm all for quails, but sir, you
want to hear
need
the other?
to
Well,
defend
guess
yourself.
what? Guess what? I talked so much. You're going to have to stay tuned for next month.
There's going to be sequels.
Okay, well, I'll catch up. Okay. All right.
People in trees,
So
people
he-
collapsing
yeah,
to heat exhaustion.
Yeah.
All right, sir, I wait your answer.
Okay. Okay. So the primary answer is that wait the next month. I will touch base later on in this thing here before we get there. Well, I'll touch base, but I won't get into the major one. I'm saving for for next month. You know, stay tuned. So this is going to be an epic series. Because remember, that's 50 years. It's a long way to get. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay. And so this is Glacier Bay, Marjorie Glacier, and that's Mount Root. And occasionally I have to get away. And kind of a midlife crisis when I was in the late 30s, early 40s, probably early 40s. Yeah, early 40s. I took a Sierra Club trip, 10 days to on a Glacier Point kayak trip. 10 days in a kayak. And this is overwhelming experience that every day was fascinating and an adventure, and really not as scary as you might look. The one thing here is that our guide, Captain Dr. Lush, he was a pediatrician who quit being pediatrics for the state of Alaska and just decided to give tours. And he would take a 10-day tour, and he would say, okay, there's 12 of us, and there's a double clipper kayak, a 2-in kayak, and we could, and here we're in this unbelievable calving glacier, which this was the late 1970s, early 80s, and no, a little, it was later, a little mid 80s, I guess, and it probably that glacier may not be calving anymore. It may be a land glacier. It'd be interesting to go back and kayak, but this one here was still producing icebergs, and he always said to us, now be careful, going through these icebergs, because remember, 2/3 or 4/5 are underground, under the water, and if you tip it too much, it may even, it may tip over. You could tip over your kayak. These are special kayaks for ocean going. It has a buoyant side on the side. It has a rudder. You can move it, facing waves and such. Pretty good, and floatable. And I think right here was a harbor seal that I actually took a picture of. But spectacular. Oh, next slide. After that, I joined Jerry Snoopfloat, and we went to Denali, and we weren't going to climb Denali. We weren't that experienced, but a spectacular view of Denali. And we also went on the Kenai Peninsula and got to get on a small plane and fly over some of the glaciers in the Kenai area. And then we canoed down the Kenai River from the headwaters of the Kenai nearly to the ocean. And then, which was quite elaborate, because our buddy Ranger, who was a director of the uh, wildlife moose range, actually said, here's my here's my canoe. There's 8 to 10 lakes there at the headwaters. You can portage from one to another. You can fish, and then I'll pick you up at the same place. But after 3 days, we were all by ourselves in no place. Didn't see anybody for 30 miles of this area, the headwaters. And after about 2 or 3 days, we're thinking, well, we got 2 more days here, and we're pushing our luck. But we saw that the headwaters started right there. We looked at a map, and it wasn't really a great map, but we saw that it went back down to the highway, and we figured it was about 20 miles of river, and this is all flatland. It's all over there. So we actually canoed that out there, unbeknownst, thinking that I hope it goes through. Otherwise, we'd have had a portage and leave the canoe. But it did. Quite an adventure. But then the other adventure was here, the next one. Okay, the next picture there. People, usually you don't get that great picture, supposedly, because of, this is an old Pentax camera, spectacular. And the next one. And this is the great tundra, and that road that's where the school bus goes. It's quite a ride, and you can camp. And so we're going to camp at one of the stations, but we'll go to the next one here, and they say, hey, we will not let you out of the bus and camp. There's these designated areas if there's been a sighting of a grizzly bear. So sure enough, the first one, there's a grizzly bear right there. And within about 2 seconds after I said this, that grizzly bear leaped all the way into that bush and came out with a marmot, a big old marmot-like animal. Yeah, and we said, no, we don't want to get out here. So next one, let's go to the next one there. This is, so Jerry, back in those days, was coming up to meet me there to go to Kenai and this, and then the Denali, we'll hike in. And Denali, here's a river and willow trees. And everybody told us, well, when you backpack, you come with bells. And Jerry, realized that he kind of was a hunter, and he had possession of 357 and a 44 Magnum gun. And believe it or not, he just brought those with him, and one for me and one for him, so that if we were coming in contact, he had the bullets. He just went on a regular, Alaskan Airlines or whatever it was, walked in, and he ended up getting giving me a gun, and right off the plane, here's your gun. And we said that, okay, what we do is we ring the bell, and if we come in, so that way that'll startle the bear, and it will start running. If it runs to us, we'll shoot the gun. But there's a gun there, yeah. So Jerry is a character, and I said, yeah, okay, let's make sure I do that right, because I've never shot a darn gun before. I never shot. He gave me the 44 with a long barrel, and I go, I never shot one of these. He said, no problem, just aim it, And I said, Jerry, I don't know. I'll ring the bell, shoot the gun. If a bear's coming at me, I don't know. I may get confused. Okay. And he goes, you mean you're afraid that you might ring the gun and shoot the bell, And so he's practicing right now, making sure he's ringing the bell and shooting the gun. So quite a crazy day, but we didn't see any more spectacular trip. Okay, next one.
Hey, Arthur wants to know if you're allowed to go to Denali if you can't grow a thick beard.
That may be a requirement.
Oh no, I'm in trouble now.
Yeah, I suggest strongly to do it. Arthur, you'd do great. It'd be a great trip for you. The next one now is William A. Wilson Intermediate School. This is my first job, 1967. And we had the worst area in the place there. And so we ended up just getting the school district to build us a science building. And we collected some money, the money to supply the inside of the building. He says, no, we're going to build a nature area. So unbeknownst to the soccer field and other people, we just, had someone bring fence, official fence for about $5,000 and put a fence, a barbed wire fence all the way around almost an acre of land, including this thing there. And we were going to make a duplication of the Santa Clara Valley. So we'd have a pond, and then over on this side, over on there would be, you'd bring some hills and we'd plant plants that are on the hills, and over here you'd have the Santa Cruz Mountains, so we'd plant the redwoods and pines on that side. So kids, so the kids' days was to dig. We got, tons of shovels and wheelbarrows, and they just started digging. We realized they needed a little help, so we did have a bulldozer do a little bit. They actually did too big. This is kind of a huge hole. So then we had a little creek going down to it. And here's the first day of filling that there. That white stuff is diatomaceous earth. We had experts of UC Agricultural Center. In those days, this was a farming area, and you could just call them up, and they would come up and analyze your land and say, how can we prevent water from just penetrating you back into the water table? And he says, well, get some diatomaceous earth, and FMC has about 1,000 pounds that you can use, and you can go into a truck and get it and just pay it around and have the kids pound it down in the ground. So that's what their job was, to pound diatomaceous earth back into the ground, and then we filled it. So here is what it looked like really only about 8 years later. So let's go on to the next one. Is that amazing? This is kind of a dark one, thanks to John Trapani, who unfortunately right now is being evacuated from his house in Salinas by Carmel Valley. In the Carmel Valley, he's had to move, and fortunately he had his old house he hadn't rented yet, and so he's in an old house with no thing there. But John Trapani was our student teacher, and so and he ended up, when he became a teacher in Salinas, he developed a natural area too. So it's amazing what's happened and what you have started. It's kind of neat. So this is William A. Wilson and Jerry Stuflo. This was his gem. And a lot of times we'd say, what are we going to do today for a lesson plan? Well, let's let the kids just mess about. And so we would mess about. So let's go to the next one. So the next slide. So, I think it was Paul Pettarelli decided to make a wind generator. And he's from Cochabamba, Bolivia, South America. So we got a different view. Is that they use oil drum, 50-gallon oil drums, acetylene torch them, separate them so that they're just halfway in, and then anchor it. And then the wind, it had to be you had really good ball bearings, but you could get a little bit of, and moving around the red, white, and blue, 3 different levels. And right at the top is or at the bottom was a Docent generator and a pulley that would connect to the movement of those. And that Docent generator had the wires running up there, and that would light the light at the top. So it was sort of the poor man's electricity, and it wasn't much. But this is 1970, so this is way far ahead of most people think. To do that, lights on top. And then he was in. Paul Pettarelli would like the fruit trees. This is Santa Clara Hearts Delight, and so he planted fruit trees. So I had to kind of give away from not being just a natural area. So it was fruit trees and farms and such. Okay, next one. And we developed 7 field trips for kids. 3 for 7th grade, Coyote Hills Regional Park, Henry Cow, Sonoma Regional Park. Great, they're about, and each one of those, along with then 8th graders with Marine Ecological Institute 4-hour, Punta de los Lobos State Reserve, and a 3-day backpack. And from there, they would get practically all 14 biotic communities in the Bay Area. So they learned that and experienced. They didn't just learn them, they felt them. They walked the land through those. And then I would have a family field trip, Golden Gate Bridge, Marine Mammal Rescue, Stationary Army Corps Bay Models, Audubon Canyon Ranch. If you've never been to these areas, they're exciting to go to. And well, I would ask the families on a Sunday morning, meet me at 8 o'clock at the flagpole and drive your family up and follow me. Well, I did that for quite a few years until there was about 25 to 30 cars that showed up. And when we might try to go out to dinner, I had reservations for about 20, 25 in Occidental up by Russian River. And there was 64 of us. And I call them up and from Point Reyes, and I say, I want to change my reservation. And it's at the Union Hotel. And some people know that. It's a great place. And an Italian restaurant. And they said, how many? And then 64. So when are you going to be here? I went about an hour. And they go, okay. And I'll be done when we got there. The salad bowl was already, the minestrone soup was still on the, could that happen today? No way. So I stopped there. I haven't done that since. Okay. But old timers know those if they were through that. Okay, next one. 1970. Great day. John Trapani, which I thought that was him, but he says, no, that's not him. But he was the one that got this photograph, and he was the one that was there and experienced it. He was a graduate student at San Jose State then. I think he was getting his master's degree then on benthic organisms of San Francisco Bay. So kind of interesting. Got to look up what benthic organisms are. So and this thing here is that San Jose State should be recognized as one of the founders of Earth Day because you guys, everybody knows that it's, okay, well, I guess his name, I always forget his name. Oh, I didn't put it down. It'll come to me, or someone might do that. It was the person that went to Congress, Wisconsin Senator, Senator Gaylord Nelson. Gaylord Nelson asked worldwide to have an Earth Day. And by the way, it was going to be on John Muir's birthday, April 22nd. So Earth Day is now actually John Muir's birthday. Well, anyway, it turned out that the humanities department, there was some environmentalists there, and the 160 class, it decided in January in the semester to celebrate Earth Day and make a special one and have their own. And they had their Earth Day. This was in February, so it wasn't in April. So they had the first one, and what they did was collect 50 cents, $1 from the 12,000 students or how many there were, and everyone contributed. And they were going to demonstrate that to stop air pollution, one car at a time. So, and air pollution was bad. There was a horrible things where, you're putting those little, people are saying you're ruining cars by putting those smog detectors. They're not going to, we don't get as good as mileage and it's not going to do any good. Wow, 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 wow. There were all sorts of naysayers. But in the fact, it was, cars today are much more efficient and have really reduced pollution. So the way they were going to do it was buy a car on Stevens Creek Boulevard and all the things there. And this is a Ford Pinto, I think. And they went out and they marched all the way with their cash, dollar bills and coins, and went to the car dealer and bought a brand spanking new with a 0 on the odometer Ford Pinto. And they purchased it. They got the keys, and the first thing they did was make sure the doors were open, and they threw away the keys. And that engine was never going to start. And they pushed it from Stevens Creek Boulevard down the San Carlos, all the way to a huge ditch or hole in the ground that they did right there on the campus of San Jose State, right in the middle, by the clock tower. And they not only with that, they had all sorts of other activities. They had art supply of nature art. And they had people dressing up like elves and things. This is the 70s. So and this was called a survival fair. That this is for our survival. We better change, or there's not going to be humans on this planet. We're going to destroy we're going to destroy the ability for us to live on this planet. And so the one way to start is to get rid of that air pollution. So they actually did that and covered that. They, by the way, before they put it in there, they made some more money by just taking sledgehammers and beating it to death. So nobody would ever think about digging it up and driving it away. So they just beat the hell out of that thing there. So thank you, San Jose State and the Humanities Division 160. San Jose State in February, starting the true first there in this area. Okay, next one. And just to go, we do still have an Earth Day celebration at Ulistac, and try to keep that going. And sometimes we've done some things, and we missed it a couple years. But that's when actually our Wildflower Day was supposed to be tied to that for a while. Okay, next one. So this is the hike to observation deck and peer down on the nest 100 feet off the ground in the redwood trees at Ottoman Canyon Ranch, overlooking Bolinas Lagoon, 3.5 miles from Stinson Beach. And as a 1962-63 biology major at San Francisco State, taking a natural history course of the California, this was one of our first stops in the spring. And I went back almost every year. And what it is that there's an overlook that this is in a canyon. These are the tops of redwood trees you're looking at. In order to see this, you have to hike up a hill, and then on the side of the hill edge, they kind of pruned it away so that they have put up spotting scopes and a little place to sit that you can look down into the nest. So there's great heron, our herons here, and then great blue herons. So egrets, great egrets and great blue herons. And usually they're in the nuptial plumage, spectacular, overwhelmingly pristine area to look at. And the house who is right in front here in Bolinas Lagoon was an old sea captain's house. And it's good, and this is what we would do. But unfortunately, right here, I just heard recently that they're no longer going here. For 100 years, they nested in the tops of these redwood trees, sometimes 40 or 50, sometimes 80 or 90 of different, but there always came. And then there was always but there was preyed upon by rats going up to the side, so they put little metal barriers, and raccoons would get up there, and then they kind of fought that off for a while, and then hawks would come, but that they took some. But what really started going was ravens and crows, and ravens would come down, and we were always there when the little babies like this and there, and some of my 8th grade student was looking at this, and with her family, and a raven came down and just plucked it away, and just and the egrets just sit there, perch there, and don't do anything. Well, the one thing is that maybe there's 2 of them, but if there's both of them get preyed on, they just go through the nuptial plumage courtship and lay another egg. Because they're indeterminate layers, so they can do more than just one. But like chickens are like that, indeterminate layers. We're lucky to have chickens that are indeterminate layers. Otherwise, they figure out, hey, how come we keep laying these eggs and some darn human steals them, That's it, So anyway, next one, Ottoman Canyon Ranch. Here is that egret there that we would see. Spectacular view, and sadness there. So now the next one is Salander, right in the creek. The Olema Creek goes through there, or not Olema, but another creek comes through there. And we, as a natural history thing, went down there in 1964, and we discovered in the spring newts. They're aquatic newts at that time because their tail is kind of rectangular. As they move to the terrestrial stage, it kind of rounds out. And so I could go to one exact nicky little pond, and there would be the newt. So for 30 years. I would go back there, 34, almost 35 years. I'd go back almost every year, and with kids and adults, and I would say, go over there and see if you can find my great grandson, because they home up and excavate in the surrounding dirt soil in the forest, and then they come back to this very same, they home into the very same pond that they were there when they were born. And quite interesting to do. So there's my great grandson, California Nude. And then to wrap off, and I have time, yeah. Am I okay on time? Just 2
So we
minutes?
actually are over, but this is the last story. So
Okay.
do share it. Do share it.
Okay. Another lonely one that I did, and I'm sorry, Eric, I kind of led you on because we're going to do that next time. But here in the late 1970s, I took one of my lonely trips just on myself to go up to Tuolumne Meadows. Because normally I have the next set I'll talk all about Tuolumne Meadows and Sierras the next month or time. But met Kim, and I just go by myself. I don't have any reservations, and I'm going to go in the backcountry. But when I get there, I want to camp at the campground. Well, I can't. There's always film, so I kind of sneak in, and I park my car somewhere else, by the store or somewhere. I just walk in, and I find somebody that's by themselves, okay, and seem like they're just they're not interested in anything else, and I go in and ask, because most of them are families, like I don't want to interfere with that, or friends, but they said this person's young lady was there by herself, and I asked, I plan to go in tomorrow in the backcountry. Can I just set my tent up and use your table here, because I was going to buy stuff for the thing at the store for the next morning, so I couldn't go in the backcountry. So I said, and she said, fine. I'd like to have the company. So I sat there, and of course, during our meals, she started talking about, and she was going through some notes and photographs. And I said, what you looking at? She says, well, I'm here on a mission to find some of the areas that my my grandfather had taken, had painted. He's a Japanese she's Japanese, and he was a famous Japanese woodcutting artist from UC Berkeley. But then what happened was during the World War II, he was interned to that Nevada internment for Japanese. And he had to take all his woodblock paintings that he had meticulously made all the way to make, first of all, to Japan to be made, and then come back to finish. And then he stored them somewhere. And that he had, just before he passed away, he said that he had them stored, and that you could go ahead and write this, the story. And it turned out the story that he wrote, he asked, his phone, was that he had this lake that was his favorite picture of the area of Sierra Nevadas. And it was by Tuolumne Meadows. It was by the campground, wasn't too far from the road. And I don't know where it is. It's not on the map. So I got a map out and I looked on the topo map, and it wasn't on there. There was no name. But I looked at Lake Elizabeth, which I had been to, and I noticed that there was a little puddle of a lake, maybe half mile off the trail along the escarpment of the Sierras there. And I said, hey, I'm not doing anything. If you want to have help, I'd be glad to help you. She says, I would definitely like help because I'm not really familiar with this area. I really don't know where to look. So he said, you've done the thing already by looking at Lake Elizabeth and seeing that it's close to there. So I was really eager. I said, heck with going out in the backcountry. This is amazing. So we walked to Lake Elizabeth. It's only 2 miles. And then headed south east, up into the escarpment and through the forest and going toward the escarpment there, the rock. And this is what we saw. Exactly that right there. And I, it was a tear to my eye. I mean, she had talked to me about all the things that he'd done, his internment, and how rough it was for the family, and how to get back, he had there. And then she even talked about her grandfather-in-law, who owned part of Point Lobos at Japan, and connected sea urchins and sent back to Japan. Amazing background. But she was going to take this here and then meet with this information and with the other photos and other paintings and write a book. And you can get that book at the Yosemite store. A famous artist of Tuolumne Meadows, Chiro Obata. And I have that in the back of I have just a print of this painting. And that really is what all these field trips are about, is to explore and to adventure and to connect people, not only with the nature, but with the art and creativity of what nature brings to us.
I want to thank you so much for doing this, Dennis. This has been fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It is recorded, so we will be able to post this probably on the Open Space Authority YouTube channel. So if you go to Open Space Authority, if you search that inside of YouTube, you should be able to see this within a day or two. And there will be sequels, so stand by for the sequels. Meanwhile, if you feel comfortable, Dennis, let me know, or let these folks know where they can get in touch with you if they have more questions. This is public. Don't give your home, your home phone number or something. But if you have someplace that you would like them to write to you, or like an email address or something like that you're comfortable, I can send that out in the Eventbrite, like as a letter to the people that signed up to come.
Very good. Yeah, I could give you my email. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd love to hear from you.
So if you're comfortable sharing your email right now, please go ahead and just say it for them.
Okay, it's pretty easy. It's Dennis Dowling 42 @gmail.com. So it's Dennis Dowling, Dennis, Dowling 42. And the 42 is kind of my age. It's really where I was born. But I remember it though. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you everybody for coming. We really appreciate you. This has been great.
Thank you.
Keep your eyes open for the next one coming up next month. Okay.
Yeah, so how many do we get?
I haven't decided. I think that these are fun. So.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll see everybody later on.
Thank
you so much, Dennis.
Thanks, Santa Clara Open Space Authority. You're awesome.
Yay!
Okay.